since 1971, this 100x that we've had in real estate, that is an opportunity that is not going to be there for the next generation, and it's kind of an opportunity that was there post, severance of the gold standard. We saw a rotation of financialization into real estate and banking deregulation and all of these things. But all we've really created is housing has become a casino, so it's no longer utility value. It's no longer what housing is meant to be. It's meant to be a place where you lay down your roots and you have a family and, you build for the future, the great Australian dream, the great American dream. Mm-hmm. We've got the same dreams, Australians and Americans. We have the same dreams. Canadians are the same. But the reality is that dream no longer exists. Okay. And I know that for an absolute fact because, I mingle with kids in their 20s because I've got 3 daughters in their 20s. And when we have gatherings and, get-togethers and barbecues and parties and events and things like that, I get to talk to these kids and, they've already sold out the future for the present because they know that there's no hope. They can no longer save their way to prosperity anymore. And that's a really sad thing, they're living for today because they know there's no point in them sacrificing their lifestyle now in their 20s to try and save 10, 15, 20 years for a down payment on a house because that day is never going to come, So it's a really sad situation, but a lot of people don't realize that when they look at the value of real estate as an example, it's only really tracked with the expansion of the money supply over the last 50 years. And so even though people are under the illusion that they've generated significant wealth through this, 80 to 100x, whatever the averages are, somewhere in that ballpark, when you really consider lifestyle, they've only really transferred from then to now in terms of transferring that wealth into lifestyle. And so, I think that the more people begin to realize that when it comes to assets and it comes to inflation, we have to be stored in monetary instruments that can't be corrupted. And this is what Bitcoin is. And this is why when we really consider true inflation, which is not just what they tell us, they tell us about the price of bread and milk and eggs going up by, 5% in a year, known as CPI, Consumer Price Index inflation. And so everybody listens to the news and the economists and the treasurer and the politicians that are all talking about CPI, Consumer Price Inflation. And they kind of just take that for what it is. But what they don't realize is that there's a more sinister form of inflation known as monetary expansion that is stealing from their purchasing power at an even more significant rate. And this is why we have what's known as a hurdle rate. And the hurdle rate is more like 13 to 15%, which basically means in order to keep up with true inflation, which is the rate of monetary expansion, you need to be saving your time and energy in abstract form in an asset that is going to beat that. And we know that real estate over the past 100 years in this country, and I'm sure it's probably similar in the US, it's hovered around that 8 to 10% per annum. And, in today's world, it's not enough to keep up with true inflation. Bitcoin, when we look at the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin, if you just take the last 10 years, it's hovered around that 55 to 60% compound annual growth rate. And I know a lot of people immediately challenge this and they say, oh yeah, but that's not going to continue. Oh yeah, but this is going to level out. Oh yeah, it's going to, go to 15 and 10% and it's going to, fall to the same rate of growth that most other assets. But the reason that's not going to happen is because Bitcoin is absolute scarcity. And this is the reason why Bitcoin is demonetizing gold. It's demonetizing real estate. It's demonetizing the S&P because it's a scarcer asset than all of those. And, there's a great graph actually that Kathy Wood and ARK Invest put out that I often share with people, and it shows over the last decade the average compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin versus every other asset on average. And when we talk about every other asset, we're talking stocks, bonds, real estate, currencies, collectibles, fine art. I mean, you name it, right? Mm-hmm. 7.5 to 8%, whereas Bitcoin's done 59, I believe, is the exact figure. And so it's outperformed everything to the tune of 7, 8, 9 times. And yet people are still ignoring it. And so this is the reality that people have to wake up to. The reason why Bitcoin is repricing everything, the reason why the price of everything else is falling in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin is the most scarce asset that we have. There is only 21 million Bitcoin. There is only 100 million Satoshis, fractions of a Bitcoin, per Bitcoin. And if people could just understand that, I think it'll help them to understand that when you have a finite monetary instrument sitting over here that cannot be changed, doesn't matter how much the US government buys of it, it still can't be changed. And then you have the infinite currency, which we know is infinite. It's always going to be inflated forever. And then we have these less scarce assets from, stocks and shares to real estate. This is the reason why Bitcoin is repricing everything else, because it's the most scarce, whereas everything else is not absolutely scarce. So it's just a realization, I think, Brandon, that people are going to come to in their own time. But this is part of the great transition that we're in, the shift in people's understanding of moving from this debt-based fiat system to this decentralized, absolutely scarce, finite asset,
So I have multiple things I want to unpack here. This is fascinating. I think this is really the crux of some of the stuff we've already talked about, and like the head games I think the average person plays in their head. And let's be honest, even Bitcoiners. I mean, I know the reason I think many of us are here is because we still question to this day. We still go through the game in our own head. We go through the gauntlet of, am I right? Are we going the right direction? Which I think is incredibly important. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Thomas Jefferson of question everything with boldness, even the existence of God himself, or if there is a God, surely he'd appreciate that over blindfolded fear. And it's just this constant learning, this growth, going back to the personal development, your whole life being centered around this. Much of my life was centered around this. And so I think that is why we're here. So we're constantly asking that. And I think that's really what we're trying to get across to in a large extent. You have a pretty amazing background, and you have helped tons of people. You've coached tons of people on money, personal development, bettering yourself, holistic approaches to life, your health. I would love for you to talk about how many hours you've spent helping people, and also why people still are missing Bitcoin. Why are we only at 100,000 US dollars or 110,000? Why are we only there and we're not at 10 million, 20 million when all the information is there for us? I'd love for you to dive into your experience here, but also why is it taking seemingly so long with all the information available for us to get to a point where we all know this is headed?
Yeah, I mean, great question up front. I guess a lot to unpack there. Probably a good place to start, Brandon, is just a real brief synopsis of my background and how I got here to be in Bitcoin and now to be, I guess, teaching and coaching people in this space. I kind of grew up in the personal development industry. My mom and her partner, they used to bring speakers out, particularly from America in the mid to late 80s and 90s. And so I spent a lot of time in that space. And I guess from that, I really got to understand, the power of positive change and crafting your life and shaping your destiny and thinking outside the box and entrepreneurship and personal growth and living life at a higher level, and so, for me, it's been a natural progression to Bitcoin because I see Bitcoin as positive change. I see it as a way for people to escape the matrix, escape the 9 to 5, the rat race, all of the things that people seem to be stuck in these days that aren't necessarily their fault. It's more a function of the system. And the reality is, unless you have a desire and a willingness and the proactivity to think outside the box and to go on a hunt for positive information, be it Bitcoin and anything else, most people are going to stay stuck. And so for me to be, sharing Bitcoin, for 15 years, I had a seminar company of my own. My wife and I, we used to travel all across Australia for 15 years. We'd do about 30 events a year, preview events where we'd have hundreds of people in a seminar room in all the major cities of Australia. And then we'd dovetail into a 3-day workshop, which was really transformational for people. We worked very closely with a gentleman by the name of Don Tolman, who's a US educator. And it was all about holistic health, stepping outside of the healthcare matrix and being responsible for your own health and well-being. And so we used to promote this message called self-care and self-education. Self-care and self-education. And so, for me now to be able to, utilize the knowledge I've gained since 2018 when I first really dove into Bitcoin, and then probably at an accelerated rate during COVID, because I think COVID for most people was a massive wake-up call. And that's when I really started to double down on my learning. And now earlier this year, I made the choice to, start sharing what I know about Bitcoin. And what's happening now is I'm getting a lot of people in their middle stages of life, who are probably looking to plan for retirement, who understand the system is broken, and they're coming to me, and I'm having one-on-one sessions, consultations, coaching calls with them. And it's all about just helping people, firstly, to really level up whatever their setup is right now in terms of self-custody, in terms of stacking, in terms of, getting themselves self-sovereign. A lot of people are looking to take their retirement account, which we know retirement accounts right now are essentially under attack. There's a lot of laws coming into Australia pending that are attacking our 401k system, which of course is known as superannuation. And so with all of that, it's kind of the long-winded, answer to your question, but I wanted to give the viewers just a bit of a background as to why I'm here, how I got here. But for me, Bitcoin is the number one thing that anybody should be learning about right now, because it's not just about money. It's about personal transformation. It's about personal growth. It's about looking forward to the world we want to see. There's a saying in Bitcoin, as you well know, Brandon, fix the money, fix the world. So when we can return to sound money, which is what Bitcoin truly is, we can start to really reshape the world and create a brighter future, not just for ourselves, but for our kids and our families as well.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, then check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.